Today is Tuesday, February 15th. We'll tell you about the rare emergency powers Canada's leader is now using to deal with massive protests and how the country may go after the protesters' money. Also, a major reversal, what former President Trump's longtime accounting firm now says about all the documents it prepared for him. Plus, why the state of Texas is suing Meta. A new type of like feature is coming to Instagram stories. And of course, stick around for Trivia Tuesday. Welcome to the Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. U.S. intelligence officials think Russia could invade Ukraine as soon as tomorrow. But all sides in the Eastern European standoff say they're still willing to negotiate. About 140,000 Russian troops are now surrounding the country. They include some of Russia's best-trained battalions, special forces, and missiles that could strike targets throughout Ukraine. But just yesterday, Russia's foreign minister said he sees plenty of possibilities for diplomatic talks with the West. Leaders of countries like the U.S., France, and Germany, as well as United Nations officials, have also tried to act as mediators lately. They all say they're still somewhat hopeful these tensions can end with talks, even though they are preparing for the worst-case scenarios. Now, Ukraine's leaders say they want to meet with Russia directly. Russia has a long list of demands, including that NATO never accept Ukraine as a member. Ukraine has been trying to get into the alliance for a while now, but this week, Ukraine's president made it seem like he might back off that request. For now, NATO is not making promises either way. Meanwhile, because of this ongoing crisis, the U.S. closed its embassy in the Ukrainian capital. The few diplomats still there were moved to a city in far western Ukraine near the NATO ally of Poland for their safety. The U.S. says the regular embassy will reopen again eventually when the tensions calm down a bit. The U.S. Defense Secretary is traveling to Europe today. He'll visit Belgium, Poland, and Lithuania for meetings with government leaders and military officials. To be continued. Canada's leader is using very rare emergency powers to end protests in his country. It does a few things. For example, Canadian banks are now authorized to freeze any account suspected of funding the blockades, and crowdfunding websites are coming under a lot more scrutiny. It suspends the insurance on any vehicles involved in the protests, and it lets federal officers start backing up local police forces. The Canadian Parliament does still have to approve these changes, but most federal lawmakers there already say they will. For weeks now, hundreds and sometimes thousands of protesters in semi-trucks and other vehicles have clogged the streets of the Canadian capital and a few border crossings with the U.S. Just this week, police say they broke up an armed group that was ready to use violence to block another border crossing into Montana. These protesters have been rallying against COVID-19 restrictions and condemning government leaders. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the protests are, quote, harming our economy and endangering public safety, especially in places where trucks are blocking roads since essential services cannot run through those areas. His cabinet also mentioned how, among peaceful protesters, there have also been intimidation, harassment, and hate. But some civil liberties groups say these protests still don't meet the standard for the Emergencies Act, and as one local official put it, this action by Trudeau risks putting oil on the fire. Similar trucker protests have also sprung up in Israel, France, Australia, New Zealand, and Belgium. Even more are planned, including one that's still in the works for the U.S. Former President Trump is losing the support of his longtime accounting firm in an ongoing legal battle. The firm is now cutting ties with both Trump and his family business. And the firm says it can no longer stand behind the financial statements it prepared for Trump or his company for a decade. The accounting firm prepared his statements from 2011 to 2020, and the company says they were based on information Trump and the Trump Organization provided. Now, this is a big deal because those statements are currently at the center of two fraud investigations. They're looking into whether Trump and his company exaggerated the value of his properties to trick lenders into giving him the best loans. To be clear, the firm says it still does not know for sure if the statements have discrepancies or not, but that it's doing its own investigation along with the New York's Attorney General and the Manhattan District Attorney. The Trump Organization responded to these latest developments, saying it was disappointed in the accounting firm's decisions, but it also insisted all the work followed regular accounting standards. Trump's main accountant already testified privately before a grand jury on this topic. Trump and two of his adult children also have been called to testify, but they're fighting those calls. The Trumps say these investigations are all politically motivated. The so-called mega drought in the southwestern U.S. has broken another record. The last 22 years now rank as the driest 2 decades since at least 800 AD. That's according to a new study published this week. In the research, scientists analyzed droughts dating back 1,200 years, and they found this one really is historic, even more severe than the mega drought in the 1500s. These days, nearly 95% of the southwestern U.S. is in a drought. And with that, wildfires have grown more intense, and water supplies have been dwindling in the Colorado River area. Researchers say the West would be in a drought regardless of climate change, but they did say the warming planet is making things a lot worse. They say more than 40% of the severity can be traced back to greenhouse gases. And unfortunately, this drought is expected to continue. More news is coming up, but first, a quick break to thank our sponsor. It's a new year, which means it's time for new ideas. And turns out that women may be better investors than men. That's right, according to research, women investors outperform their male counterparts. So what gives some women investors an edge? They're more likely to be risk-conscious with their investments, according to this research. And one asset that can help diversify your portfolio and is not so correlated to traditional stocks and bonds is blue-chip contemporary art. And typically, it's only the bajillionaires like Beyonce and Bezos who can afford a chic Picasso for their walls. But Masterworks is changing all of that. Masterworks is the startup giving everyday investors a piece of the art pie, or palette to be metaphorical. They've made blue-chip art investable, so you can own a fraction of a multi-million-dollar piece of art. That way, anyone can add paintings by artists like Monet, Basquiat, and Banksy to their portfolio without paying millions. And you can join them by going to Masterworks.Art/newsworthy. Again, that's Masterworks.Art/newsworthy. See important disclosures at Masterworks.io/disclaimer. Texas is suing Facebook's parent company Meta over facial recognition tools. The state's attorney general is accusing the company of repeatedly breaking a state protection law by capturing and commercializing on biometric data in people's photos for more than a decade. Biometric data are identifying characteristics like eye scans or facial patterns. Attorney General Ken Paxton also said the company shared the data with third parties and did not destroy the info quickly enough. Facebook already shut down its facial recognition system and stopped automatically identifying people in their photos, and the company promised it would delete more than 1 billion users' information it got from the recognition tool. The Wall Street Journal cites sources who say this latest lawsuit is seeking hundreds of billions of dollars in penalties. Meta fired back, saying the suit has no merit and it's promising to defend itself. The mega-popular video app TikTok says it's trying to make the app a safer place, especially for younger users. U.S. lawmakers have raised concerns about some specific content on the app, like anything that promotes eating disorders and dangerous hoaxes. So now TikTok says it'll ask creators to make videos encouraging their followers to think things through when they view certain content and to report it if it's harmful. Plus, TikTok says it's also developing a new maturity system where there will be different kinds of content restricted for different age ranges. Another popular app is making some changes too. Instagram is now letting users send private story likes, meaning you can now like someone's story without sending them a direct message. Instead, the new update just shows a heart icon when you watch the story. If you tap it, the other person gets a regular notification, not a private message. The head of Instagram showed it off, saying it's meant to be private and it will not show how many likes the story gets either. It's rolling out now. 3 big Hollywood stars may be joining forces to host the Oscars this year. If they do, it'll be a big change from the last 3 years when there was no host at all. Variety is citing sources that say Regina Hall, Amy Schumer, and Wanda Sykes are in talks for the job, and there's a chance they'll host together. We'll find out for sure this morning. The final picks will be announced on Good Morning America. It's been 35 years since as many as 3 people hosted Hollywood's biggest night, and never have that many women held the MC position in one single night. As far as how 3 hosts will split up the show, apparently each comedian will host a 1-hour block of the ceremony, with Amy Schumer kicking off the evening. The show is banking on a big year because the Oscars are coming off its lowest-rated telecast since it first hit the air almost 50 years ago. This year's ceremony is slated for March 27th. Meanwhile, another high-profile hosting gig was revealed yesterday. Host of The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, will head up this year's roasting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's the association's first dinner since 2019, since the pandemic put the tradition on pause. It brings together journalists and government officials, plus a whole slew of celebrities, and they all poke fun at each other. That goes down at the end of April. You might see Noah before then. Besides The Daily Show and a stand-up tour, he's also hosting the Grammys on April 3rd. A billionaire CEO is on track to go further into space than any other human in half a century. Jared Isaacman is the billionaire who paid for and organized the first ever all-civilian crew to fly to Earth's orbit, meaning no traditionally trained astronauts were on board. He made headlines last year for it, and we interviewed him right here on the NewsWorthy in March. The mission raised millions for charity. Well, now Isaacman is planning new missions to space. He bought 3 more upcoming flights with SpaceX. They include 2 missions that would fly super high into Earth's orbit. Those would be building block missions that would eventually lead to the first crewed flight on SpaceX's massive new Starship rocket. And that's the one SpaceX CEO Elon Musk hopes will one day take people to Mars. On the first trip slated for this year, Isaacman says he'll fly again and fill the other seats with 2 SpaceX employees and a former Air Force pilot. During that mission, the crew will do a spacewalk, a first for anyone traveling on a SpaceX Dragon capsule. During his announcement on the Today Show, he said, "We're going farther into space than humans have gone since we last walked on the moon." That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, thanks to our sponsor. If you feel like everyone but you is stylish on Instagram, please know a lot of the style icons and influencers do not do it alone. If you need a hand finding pieces that make you look good and feel great, then Stitch Fix has got you covered. You can schedule a fix, and a stylist will send you 5 pieces that fit your style, size, and price range with no subscription required. Keep what you like and return the rest. Or if you like to shop yourself but don't want to endlessly browse, then check out Stitch Fix Freestyle. It's an online shop built just for you. It's like having your very own clothing store. To get started, take a style quiz so Stitch Fix can learn your preferences, from your favorite colors to preferred fits and price ranges. It's time to get looks that are so you. Get started today by filling out your free style quiz at stitchfix.com/newsworthy and take advantage of free shipping and returns. That's stitchfix.com/newsworthy to try Stitch Fix. stitchfix.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to Trivia Tuesday. Today's trivia question is, what grows from an acorn? You can answer the question and play along on Instagram. Just find and follow us at NewsWorthyPod and look for the trivia quiz in our Instagram stories today. As for last week's trivia question, which NFL team has the most Super Bowl appearances? The answer is the New England Patriots. They've made it to the big game a record 11 times, and while they've actually won it 6 times, the Patriots are tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers for that record. All of the Patriots Super Bowl wins came with Tom Brady as quarterback and Bill Belichick as head coach. Then Brady left New England and won his 7th Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year before retiring a few weeks ago. But the Bucs made it known they are leaving the door open for Brady to come back if he wants. And that's a possibility Brady has not even ruled out himself, saying on a recent podcast, "Never say never." All right, thank you so much for listening today and every day. We'll be back with another news roundup tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.